Over to you, Doc.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. It is October 26th, and we are here for another episode of Real Talk Family Life, building shatterproof families, one brick at a time. Tonight, we're going to talk about our in laws. And we hope that tonight you'd have more insight on establishing and upholding respectful boundaries to safeguard our marriages, in spite of the extended family life that we may share. We're looking at fostering an environment where everyone, including our in laws, feel valued and respected. We're looking at fostering a positive and balanced relationship between your spouse and your family, and vice versa, addressing disagreements or conflicts with grace and understanding so that we ensure our marriages can thrive independently and interdependently of our extended family and independently of family interference. So tonight we have with us Pastor Anthony Henry of Faith Tabernacle. Pastor Henry is no stranger to the program, but I'd still ask you, Pastor Henry, to bring some greetings to everyone.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Sutherland. And again, let me apologize for the late start and welcome to the program this evening. Dr. Neff will be joining us shortly. But this subject is of great interest to me. And I hope that as we discuss it this evening, especially those of you who are married, those of you who are courting and you have in-laws, that you would find at least you would get some information that would help you to have a beautiful relationship with your in-laws. So look forward to having a great time this evening.
Fantastic. So, Pastor Henry, let's jump right into it. I have a few questions for you this evening, and hopefully these are questions that everyone else might have considered, whether you're only married 2 days, 2 years, or 20 years. Feel free to use the YouTube and Zoom chats to ask your questions or to make your comments as well. So, Pastor Henry, in Caribbean society, especially, I can't speak for other societies. The mother-in-law is sometimes seen as an outlaw. We have lots of television shows like Monster-in-Law, etc., and that is the portrayal of the mother-in-law when someone marries into that family. What boundaries would you advise young couples to set up so that in laws remain a positive part of their lives without being seen as the supposed outlaw?
Well, Dr. Sutherland, let me just deal with, first of all, with the preamble to the question. The whole idea of the Caribbean society and the concept of the mother-in-law that is portrayed. I think one of the songs that comes to mind is the one that was sung by the Lord Kitchener many years ago about the nosy mother-in-law. But it takes the erosion of several basic principles for anyone to regard an in-law as an outlaw. There must be a number of things that are happening that have happened to get the individual to that place. But in the Caribbean society, uh, the whole idea of the mother-in-law being an outlaw, and let me say first that it's true on both sides. It's true on both sides of the sense. So the person who thinks of that his in-law is an outlaw does not understand, first does not understand the Christian principle of honoring parents as mentioned in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 2. Honor your father and mother. And this should be extended to how we treat our spouse's parents as well. So that I would think that scripture, the whole idea of honoring parents, when you start to think of your in-laws as outlaws, I think that you are misunderstanding that there isn't a full understanding of that concept of honoring parents. However, on the other hand, an in-law who feels the need to maintain control or influence over a child life will eventually create, let me just get back here.
Mhm.
So in the Caribbean culture, the mother-in-law is often the one who is demonized, oftentimes by husbands. Kitchener's nosy mother-in-law. Women tend to be overprotective of their daughters, mainly because of fathers who left them on a sailing boat to the next village for the next woman. And so they oftentimes endured hell to raise the baby instead of throwing it away, as the song suggested. And you should understand, you should be very sympathetic to such mother-in-laws when they sharpen their cutlass or their tree canal, or some people call it a gilpin or machete, for their daughter's husband. So this is something that you need to understand, that it is something that in the Caribbean that can cause mother-in-laws to behave in a particular way. So in-laws who have had traumatic relationships can become overprotective of their child and will rarely give the couple the opportunity to resolve differences without intervening. And so in a case like that, you have the husband is saying she's a nosy mother-in-law, but the mother-in-law is remembering what she went through to bring that child into the world. And that daughter now that she brought into the world is with you. And so she doesn't want to have her daughter going through the same relationship or the same situation that that she had to go through in raising her child. And so when you are marrying into a family where there may have been a painful divorce, betrayal, or abusive situation, you can definitely look forward to that the mother or the woman may be harboring certain fears that her daughter could face similar struggles. So emotional residue can make her hyper-vigilant and overly protective, sometimes manifesting skepticism toward her daughter's partner. And this can make it difficult to trust him, while having this strong desire to shield her daughter from any potential emotional or physical harm. So it is important to understand that the nosy mother-in-law that we make out the woman to be, or the mother-in-law to be, is not always because she wants to be like this in the Caribbean society. But she is like this many a times because of her own personal situation, because of the life that she has had to live to raise her daughter. And sometimes as men, we do not understand that. Oftentimes I see this when you are offering, when somebody come to offer up their baby, and especially when the couple is married, and you talk to the gentleman and you ask him, well, do you really want, this is a little girl, do you want her to live or to go through the same situation? Do you want somebody to, when she gets to that age, to become pregnant and you're not married to her? Of course not. That's my daughter. We don't think that the woman that we are with, her mother may have been through that same situation that we are now putting the daughter through. Because you see, we have been in the Caribbean, we have been trained to believe that the brown skin girls stay home and mind baby. I'm going away on a sailing boat, and if I don't come back, you know what to do with the baby. And so you have a lot of our men who grew up with that kind of a culture. The Calypsonians help us to understand that it's all right to have a deputy. Arima tonight, Sangre tomorrow night. But we do not stop to think that those people who have been left in Arima, or the lady who has been left in Arima, would have a child. And while you have gone off sailing, that child is going to grow up to be a young woman, and the mother is going to remember what she has been through. And it's a good mother who would want to protect her child from a person like you. And so you are willing to get married and you're getting all of this pressure and you don't understand why. And so we need in the Caribbean society, in our society, to understand that when we are going through and we are getting married, that the first thing that one of the things that we need to try to do is to understand the family that we are getting married into, is to try to understand the background, because all of the baggages are coming into the relationship and you have to deal with it. So that it is very important that you understand where you are at in the relationship in dealing with the individual. Some of the things that can create some problems with with in-laws, and this now with father and mother, that we don't often take into consideration, is that sometimes the parents with good intentions have unrealistic expectations for their child. Expectations such as the social, educational, and sometimes family status of the person the child chooses to marry. So that you haven't told the child anything as a parent, because there are few parents who would talk to their children about getting married and what have you and so on. That is sometimes a subject that is discussed when the child bring the boyfriend at home, where, if you have this boyfriend, you're going to do this and that's going to happen and what have you, and they're hearing that for the first time. Well, but then the child comes in and then you start to ask about the background of the child. What school is he going to? What this? And you have all of these expectations for your child, and you expect your child to choose somebody within the the framework, within that community that you have already established yourself in, that you want your child to maintain, and you want the person who is going to be your in-law, your son-in-law, as the case may be, or daughter-in-law, you want them to be of the same status as your child. And this isn't alien to Christian families. Christian in-laws may become obsessively intrusive if their child were to marry someone outside of their religious persuasion. And I am not talking about Catholic or Pentecostal and Hinduism or Muslim or Baha'i or something like that. I'm talking within Christian religions, so that especially within the evangelical realms, if a Pentecostal were to get married to an Adventist, you can have some real problems from the parents of those two families, of either side of the family, because, one is thinking, my grandchildren ain't going to that church. My grandchildren ain't going to be Pentecostal. My grandchildren ain't going to be Adventist. And so you are now forcing your religion, your expectations on the two people, and you are trying now to convert. So both families are trying now to convert the other side to their side. And so these are things that create the problem. And one of the big things with a lot of people who face these situations, who will create the situation of somewhat being intrusive into their children's relationship, is oftentimes, sad to say, that parents get so attached to their children that when their children leave, they are left with a sense of jealousy. They feel that the love that the children had, the bond that they shared with their children, that is now given to somebody else. And so they become jealous. And that jealousness would cause to feel a lack of primary, their support and their affection. They lose that, and then they tend to be intrusive into the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that context, Pastor Henry. And I note that some of the examples you gave and the calypsos, etc., might seem to be rooted in a particular era, but even modern day, even contemporary relationships suffer from those same things. And I like that you say the mother-in-law is usually demonized because it is true when in fact, whether or not there's baggage, every mother wants what is best for her child, whether or not it's about social mobility and social status or just making sure she had more than that mother had during her lifetime. The bottom line is a mother wants to see the success of her son or her daughter. And so now that we know the background, um, I want to talk about how we manage it, right? Because as you said, there are these unrealistic expectations. And I think that from young, especially women are taught to make sure you're independent, don't take any nonsense. You can always come back home. And similarly for men, and again, I think it's all because of what you just explained, right? There's this expectation that something is going to happen, but we have not necessarily trained our sons and daughters for marital success. So I was going to say that to lead into the second question, but I see a comment. Oh, we are not taught from young that the world is a continuum and we are only temporary here to contribute to a long-term objective, that the work of God does not end with us. We are here to contribute a small bit to the bigger purpose. Yes, because he will come back for his bride. So having heard the backdrop, Pastor Henry, or the context about why mothers-in-law or sometimes fathers-in-law might meddle, might aim to be a closer part of that extended family. This often causes conflict within a relationship. And so the couples need to address those disagreements, those conflicts, whether it is, your mother-in-law, your father-in-law is meddling too much, or stop telling them all my business. Can't we just deal with this together? And so there's a struggle to maintain a healthy relationship. So my question then, when both partners recognize that in-laws are quote unquote interfering with their marriage, how can they address that issue? And how could that couple ensure that their in-laws, while addressing the issue of interference, the in-laws on both sides of the family feel valued and respected? How can we set those positive boundaries?
Well, I would say the first thing that the couple need to understand, you're a couple, you're married, and you want the support of your in-laws. And the first thing I would say to couples, to people who are married, to having to deal with problems like these, is to keep the in-laws out of unresolved issues. Keep your in-laws out of your unresolved issues. And this is one of the mistakes that many a times couples make, that married young people make. They have an issue that they cannot resolve, and they run back home to their mother or their father to get some advice. So do not seek in-laws advice on any matter that is unresolved with your spouse. Working through unresolved issues together as a couple would help you to build communication, trust, and problem-solving skills, which are vital for a strong marriage. Bringing in-laws into the relationship is like asking a doctor to care for his son in the hospital. That is very unprofessional. So that your son goes to the hospital and there are doctors in the hospital and you want the care for your son. The doctor may be a very good surgeon, the best in the hospital, but the profession would suggest that he should not operate on the son because he would always have this whole idea of I may not be able to judge the situation properly. Okay, the same way that if your son, if you're a judge and your son or daughter is brought to the courts for something that they may have done wrong, as a judge, you must recuse yourself from giving judgment because it is not going to be right. It will show a sign of bias. It would not necessarily make things right. So when there are unresolved issues in the relationship, when somehow you cannot agree on an issue, it is always better to find somebody, a third party, somebody to go to, but never your parents. Should never be your parents. It should always be someone else, your pastor, your counselor, or whoever it is, but it should not be your parents. That would help in the relationship, and it would prevent division. Was bringing in-laws into unresolved conflicts can cause sides to be taken, creating divisions within the family. It is better for the couple to present a united front once they have already discussed and resolved their issues. So I'm not saying that you should not talk to your in-laws about a matter that you may have, but once you have decided on the way forward, you can still go to both sides of the family and say, listen, this is what we have decided, this is what we are doing, but we still need your advice. You're just asking for counsel, but you have already made your decision. A form of showing respect, right? Uh, Maintain in doing this, you should maintain it helps to maintain privacy. Some issues should remain private between spouses, especially during the conflict phase. This protects the couples from intimacy and prevents unnecessary judgment from others. And you do not want that from your wife's parents or from well, let me just say your spouse's parents. You do not want that sort of a judgment, and you do not want this situation to get your family into the situation, right? And so you should always unite as a team. Couples should stand together on decisions, ensuring that both spouses are aligned before involving in-laws in any discussion. This shows in-laws that the marriage comes first and that both partners are equally responsible for the choices they make. All right, so let me pause there. I'm not sure if there are questions.
No questions yet, but just going back to, I want to go back to the comment that was made about us only being a part of this continuum and just ask what advice you give to in-laws, right? Who are continually meddling. So we know what the young couple should do. They should build, they should address the just gonna ask everybody to hit their mics, please. Thank you. They should resolve the conflict on their own before they even take it to the in-laws. But conversely, what would you say to in-laws who feel like they need to meddle? What advice would you give to that mother-in-law or that father-in-law who feels like they continually need to get in to the affairs of that couple? And just going back to the statement, because I think what he said is very important. We're only here for a small time, and we're only here to contribute to a bigger purpose. So if we feel like we have to resolve the issues as in-laws, if we feel like without our intervention things are not going to happen, what are we leaving for that man and that woman to do later on? So how would you advise in-laws when it comes to marital challenges beyond just telling them butt out or stay out of it?
Well, it's not just saying to them still, but so you're looking at the question now from the
Yeah.
in-laws point of view, so that the children are having problems. It is better that you still. It is better when they come with this situation. A good in-law should ask, did you discuss this with your husband? Did you discuss this with your wife? What is the resolve that you came to? And if there isn't that resolve, you send them back to discuss again. You need your children to grow. You need them to develop. You may not have had the space to develop you may not have had the space to develop as a husband and wife should have because of the times in which they live, because of the society in which they live. I mean, I remember my mother sharing a story with us that there was one evening she was pressing my father's clothes for a Sunday evening, and her mother, who was like half her height, I mean, literally a very short woman, they said she came in and asked her a question, and she didn't respond. She just, as we say in the corridor, she just stoops. Her
Mhm.
mother got a belt, stood up on her bench, and beat her in front of her husband. I mean, nobody can do that now. So when I got married the first time, I said, listen, don't ever try what your mother tried with me. You understand? Don't you ever think that you could come and because your mother beat you in front of your husband, that you're gonna pull out a belt for me in front of in front of my wife. She said, well, I would give her the belt. But it's the way, and we have to understand that we evolve. Things change with the information. You think about the parents back then, you think about those things, the respect that children give to their parents, uh, and the
Pastor
respect
Henry,
that.
can I interrupt you for a minute and ask everyone to mute their mics, please? You're speaking, but someone's mic is giving
Okay, let me
feedback, and
just
because
let me
it's
just try
live
to fix that.
streaming,
Yeah, let
yeah,
me
I
just
don't
try
want
Pastor
to
to.
Henry,
call
Or you
names.
can make me a
check your
co-host.
chat and I sent you a name.
No,
So
I know who it is. I just don't want to call the name on the live
if you
stream.
make, if you make me a co-host, I can manage that for you. Make me a
Make
co-host,
Dr. Samuel a co-host.
and I can.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Dr. Samuel and Dr. Neff.
Yeah, we'll be glad to have their contribution. So if they turn on their mic, I will definitely let me
Just make
just.
me a co-host, so I can manage
Yeah,
it.
you are the co-host now, Dr. Samuel. So you can go ahead and mute. You can mute the mic of the
There we
person.
go. Good
Oh, there
job.
we go. Thank you so much. Pastor Henry, sorry for interrupting you. I was trying to be nice because we're live streaming.
So so
Go
so
ahead.
to do that, I'm gonna ask Dr. Neff if she can come in and help me because I think I need to gather my thoughts
Your
again.
thoughts on that one. So,
Yeah.
Dr. Neff, just to recap, we're talking about in-laws. And we're basically, trying to seek advice on how we establish and uphold respectful boundaries to safeguard our marriage and our family life and fostering an environment where everyone feels respected, even where you have what we call meddling in-laws. And so we're asking what steps a young couple, particularly, can take to ensure that their in-laws on both sides feel valued and respected while at the same time setting up healthy boundaries so that they can address any marital problems on their own. You're muted.
Hello, everyone.
Yes.
Yes.
You may have mentioned this before, but I would certainly start with reminding the couples what Genesis 2:24 says. Therefore shall a man leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. And I think the same should be applied to the wife, because when you marry, you are to leave and cleave, right? And along with that, together, it's important for you to agree on certain things. Boundaries certainly is one of those things. You have to establish boundaries, discuss, agree, and communicate those boundaries to the in-laws so that they understand, respectfully, of course, so that they understand what's acceptable, what's appropriate in your household, and what you will or will not tolerate. So that's very important. Communication is key. Communicate with them on things. I like what Pastor Henry said earlier about if you have unresolved issues, those are not the things to communicate with your parents, right? If you have resolved things or if you have made mutual decisions and so forth, you certainly can communicate those. And things that you've agreed upon to communicate with the in-laws on both sides. But you definitely do not communicate things that are unresolved or still kind of open for discussion. Respect is important. Once you establish and show respect on both sides, I think that's important, an important piece of it, because respect is key. And you can't respect your family more than you respect his or hers. Respect has to be on both sides. Be inclusive when you can, make sure that you include both parents. One one spouse's parents cannot be the only ones invited to the home or invited to major events in the family's life, or you cannot show deference to one over the other. And I know sometimes it's a little challenging because sometimes the relationship between, I'm gonna speak to the wife. Relationship between the wife and the mother-in-law can be a little dicey, right? It depends, on the situation. Sometimes mother-in-law comes in and she feels that she can do everything right for her son. The wife can't do it the way he loves it done, and she knows him best and all that great stuff. And one thing I learned from my mother is that you stay out of your children's business. You stay out of their business, and if they invite you in, then you can certainly contribute, but you definitely don't contribute in a way that disrespects or demeans the other, right? And definitely don't butt in when you're not invited. That's really key. I don't know what all was discussed before, but I think the boundaries to me is key. Communication, being inclusive and respectful are also very important aspects of it. But underlying all of that is the leave and the cleave. And parents also have to understand that when your children marry, they're supposed to leave and cleave, and you cannot be upset or feel hurt when your son makes a decision to go with his wife's, to agree with his wife and to side with his wife over you, because he has now formed a new family, and his responsibility is to that family. And if you train him well, that's exactly what he will do.
Happy wife, happy life.
Yeah.
One of them, we have another statement in the chat. There are instances where one partner has vehemently opposed seeking counseling together and limiting all possibilities to have the other spouse speak to anyone on a matter. When a spouse says, I do not want anyone to know about our business, and he or she is not making amends, but continue to hurt the other person, there will be no choice but to turn to mommy or daddy who loves us unconditionally. How do we respond to that? Pastor Henry, I'll come to you first.
I would think that the first thing that the couple needs to understand is that you are supposed to be united, leave and cleave. And I try to say to individuals, listen, being together in a relationship doesn't make us God. You are going to have differences, but don't follow the temptation of Eve, that you would get to the point where you alone will know good and evil. You will be like God to know good and evil. Once you start to take that attitude in a relationship, you're going to have problems. So I'm responding to the question. So, so you need to understand that in a relationship, there is this whole thing about there should be this concept about interdependence, right? I am bringing something to the table, and so are you. I am just as strong as you are. This relationship is as good as you make it and as I make it. We are in this together. And what is happening today is that the many relationships are measured as far as interdependence by the dollars and cents. And sadly, that is causing a lot of pain. So I am making the money, I'm taking the bills, and so I have this say inside here. Right? Couples should understand that if there are times when you are going to have disagreement, and when you go to a counselor, you're not going to get somebody to side with you or to confirm what you are saying, but you are going for a third advice. You're going for a third, you're hoping that person can present a third alternative, because oftentimes we do not look for a third alternative. Sometimes if we can start with the principle that you are wrong and so am I, but both of us, we are right. And so we are going to look for an alternative to what you hold as what is right and what I hold as what is right. Let's look and let's search ourselves for another alternative towards the situation that is causing the conflict. And if you can do that, many a times you're going to find resolution. Again, respect is that word that is so important, because in interdependence, I am respecting your views just as much as you are respecting mine.
So, follow-up question, Pastor Henry, before I come to you, Dr. Neff. Would it help if we looked at our parents-in-law as our own parents, providing we have a good relationship with our parents? So when I talk about my mother-in-law and my father-in-law, and I know that she can be critical sometimes, and as you said earlier, Dr. Neff, it might just be easier to have my mother involved in everything because it's my mother and I know. Does it help if you talked earlier, Pastor Henry, about the Bible saying honor your mother and your father? Does it really help if I consider my parents as now drop the in-laws? I have two mothers, I have two fathers, and we now have to learn to respect each other and to include and to honor and love each other. Does that help?
Most definitely. If you can start from that foundation, you can build on that foundation. Listen, this woman who has come into my life, this is not an accident. This is God who has brought us together, and he has brought two families together. And as a result, just as much the respect that I give to you, I am going to give it to your mother. It doesn't matter who she is or what she is, because you can come in and find a nice young woman to get married to, or a nice young man to get married to. And when you get to the parents, you realize that, listen, they had nothing to do with this child. But you still have to adapt and give the respect. And let me say something about respect. Respect is only earned when you give it. Let me say that again. Respect is only earned when you give it. So that it doesn't matter how bad that person is. If you want to get that person to respect you, you can't beat them into respecting you. It's only when you show them the respect that they need that they're going to be able, that they will give you respect. May not be at the first, attempt or the first time that you do it, but when you give respect to your in-laws, you're likely going to get it back in return. Or in other words, you have to be the adult in the room.
Or lose to win. Dr. Neff.
Handling conflict in a marriage, especially when partner is hesitant to seek advice, I think requires sensitivity and understanding. And, there may be certain things you need to consider when dealing with that. Because at the same time, you have to respect your spouse's viewpoint or feeling about seeking advice outside of the home. I think trying to discuss this and come to an agreement when in the heat of the argument or in the heat of the conflict is not the time. Sometimes you may just have to wait for a safe space and a safe time to express your feelings about it, but more importantly, to have that open discussion where you're willing to listen actively to your spouse to understand their perspective on the matter. Sometimes just being open to hearing the other person's feelings can diffuse tension. It's also important to acknowledge those feelings. I understand, because you never know where that's coming from, right? Perhaps your spouse has been through some type of trauma, some type of traumatic experience in their lives where someone external to a relationship came in and it created all kinds of issues. You never know where that hesitancy is coming from. So be willing to acknowledge the feelings of your spouse and validate their emotions. It's real when someone says, I feel this way about something. That's a real emotion, right? Acknowledge it, validate it, and recognize that both of you have valid feelings, and hopefully with empathy and understanding, you can move past that. Because you want to focus on the solution to whatever the issue or the conflict is, you may want to consider alternative ways. Perhaps instead of talking to someone, maybe you can read a book or do something else that would help you do some research on the topic to help you shift the conversation and help you come up with some other possible ways of finding solutions to the conflict that you are experiencing. And also timing matters. Again, not in the heat of the conflict may not be the time to address that. So maybe waiting on, again, on another time that's more appropriate to have that discussion is also very important. And again, boundaries, set some boundaries, agree on, if we get this heated about an issue, let's pause. Let's put it on pause until we both calm down and can have a cool down period so we can have a more meaningful discussion without escalating to where where I can't hear you, you can't hear me, because believe it or not, when we escalate during conflict, we cannot hear what the other person is saying. We think we are, but we're not, right? We're not hearing what they're saying. We're not able to listen actively and pay attention to what is being said. So think about that cool down period where we can hopefully come back and address it in a more calmer, clearer time. Be patient. Sometimes with patience, your partner may be able to reflect and perhaps change his or her mind about seeking advice or seeking counsel. Don't try to force it, because forcing it, you are setting yourself up for failure. And then if there's no change in that person's perspective, there are times when you may have to seek support for yourself to help you deal with or handle that situation without bringing the conflict to a counselor or to somebody else. But maybe you may need to seek help so that you can learn how to be patient and how to listen actively and be open to other alternatives and be willing to acknowledge your spouse's feelings, because sometimes we are so busy in our own feelings and we don't take the time to acknowledge the other person's feelings and try to understand it from their perspective so that we can gain a better understanding of the entire situation. And I pause. You're muted.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I like what you said, because it talks about us putting ourselves in the other person's shoes, right? And trying to understand the situation from the other person's perspective. So I guess that the person who seems to be controlling and saying, I don't want anybody in my business, you're trying to understand from where that is coming from. And Pastor Henry, we did talk about context earlier at the start of the program, and the fact that sometimes when in-laws are meddling is because they have their own trauma that they're trying to prevent you from. And so what you want to see is the intention behind the actions, and not necessarily just the fact that this mother-in-law or this father-in-law is meddling. So that's all well and good. And I hear you, Dr. Neff, in terms of you can't change other people's behavior, but you can definitely change yours and your approach. But another question that we have, how should a God-fearing woman, and I guess a God-fearing man, if it applies to them, handle their mother-in-law who does not like her and who tries to cause trouble, intentionally tries to cause trouble in the marriage? How do I respond to the problem of a mother-in-law who's overbearing, controlling, and meddling? Pastor Henry, come back to you.
Well, again, trying to understand where the person is at is important. People do things not necessarily. Sometimes the way they offend us, may be their way of trying to help us. Or trying to help themselves. They're getting some sort of satisfaction out of what they're doing. And I wonder if this is what Jesus meant when he said, if somebody hits you on one side of the cheek, that you turn the other. Now, it takes a lot of strength to do that. And it takes a lot of effort to do that. And sometimes, at least I would say as all times, if it's possible, when you find yourself in a situation like with an in-law that is seemingly always at your throat, I think that's how we want to put you want to put it. Person is always at your throat. Treat them as another person. Treat them with love. Right? Because they are your enemies, right? They have become your enemy. And you cannot hate them as a Christian. You should not hate them as a Christian. You should love them. Because we are told to love our enemies. And I have come to realize that there is virtue in that statement. When you take the attitude of love towards a person who is always at you, a person who is hostile to you, it lowers your stress. Right? And it puts you in a better frame of mind to understand that this person is weak. Some years ago, the thought came to me and I demonstrated it at church that, we read Psalms 23 and we somehow just go through it and, it sounds so nice for us to say because we have been saying it from childhood. But the Bible, David said, thou preparest a table, I'm quoting from the King James because that's how I learned it. Thou preparest a table for me in the presence of my enemies. Could you imagine that as an individual, you have all these guys who are trying to bring you down, you have all these in-laws that don't like you, and you throw a big feast for them and you say, come sit, let's have dinner together. I mean, some of them are going to be afraid to eat. But you are going to enjoy yourself because somehow you have a good heart towards them. You are doing it out of love and you are seeing how they're killing themselves because they can't understand. And that is what Christianity is all about, living at a different level to the world. Pastor Samuel would say to be transformed and not renovated, to be transformed and not renovated. Too many of us are renovated. We need to be transformed in our thinking. Right? And when those comes to us, we live differently, we behave differently. And listen to me, the in-laws are going to see it because Jesus said it, by this all men shall know that you are Christians when you have love. So I would recommend to the person who is having a hard time with the mother-in-law, start by retraining your mind to say, I love that woman. I love that father-in-law. And he is doing all of these bad things to you. He's trying to make your life difficult. I love him. Because you know what? When you have been through the testing and the hardships, you are going to come out to be a better person. I pause.
Handling a meddling mother-in-law can be challenging, especially from a God-fearing woman who values family harmony and wants to be the best Christian wife that she can possibly be. And this may sound cliche, just pray for guidance, because it can be difficult to do. And I haven't had that experience, but I know it can be difficult. I've seen others, and it can be difficult. Pray for guidance. Begin with prayer. Ask God for wisdom and patience in dealing with this situation and dealing with this mother-in-law, and to help you approach the matter with a calm heart and not take things so personally that you get into your feelings and everything just escalates. I think it's important to involve your spouse discuss the situation with him or her and because so that you both can be on the same page, right? So he's aware of what you're going to say to his mom and vice versa. You may have to set boundaries, let your mother-in-law know what's acceptable in your household so that she understands the boundaries, but do it in a respectful manner. Now, I think Pastor Henry, I think you said something about sometimes when in-laws butt in or get involved, they're doing it from a place of love. I think I heard that somewhere, that they may be doing it from a place of love. Keep that in mind. It may not be, but keep that in mind that it may be from a place of love. It most definitely is in a place of love from her son or daughter. But with that in mind, try to acknowledge that, to your mother-in-law that, I know you're doing this because you love us and you would like to assist. However, so start off acknowledging that her intentions may be coming from a good place, whether they are or not. We're not going to judge. Just start off by acknowledging that her intentions may be coming from a good place, and thank her for her concern, but calmly assert what's important to you, or what you would like to do with the situation. Staying calm and respectful is always helpful. Again, in any conflict situation, staying calm and respectful is important to de-escalate tensions. And if you find that your mother-in-law seems to keep butting into stuff, limit your sharing. Don't share things that she's going to jump in and try to take over or have her own way with. Limit your sharing of things that you really don't want her point of view on. You don't want her perspective on. So limit your sharing so that you at least minimize, especially in areas that are important to you and your family, you minimize that buttoning in from your meddling mother-in-law. And as a Christian, you said, as a Christian, God-fearing woman, you have to also remember that you want to practice forgiveness, right? You want to practice forgiveness, not hold on to resentments and tensions, let things go, so that you could foster peace in the family. And again, I personally believe that when I forgive someone, yes, I'm forgiving you, but that forgiveness is for me because it gives me peace of mind when I forgive you and I'm not holding on to something you did me. And sometimes you may have to seek support, talk to some trusted friends or family members who might be able to help you understand your feelings and give you a clearer perspective on how to navigate that situation. But just whatever you do, handle it with grace and understanding and forgiveness and respect, because ultimately you want your family with your spouse you want to live in a peaceful home. You don't want to give your in-law the opportunity to be prominent in your home in a negative way. You do not want them to have a prominently negative stance in your home. So try to remember the respect, the grace, the understanding, the forgiveness, and pray.
Could I just butt in also, Dr. Sutherland, that if you want to maintain that independence in your home, don't be dependent on your mother-in-law or father-in-law. Right. When my son was getting married, we were both living together in a house with 4 bedrooms. And when he told me he wanted to get married, I asked him, "Where are you going to live?" And I think he understood the message that I would rather live alone than to have, you need to get somewhere to live and maintain your family so that I am not seen as being somebody who can't operate in my space. Somebody is doing something different to me and I can't talk about it and what have you and so on. So that this is becoming a new thing these days, I notice, especially in Caribbean society where people are getting married and staying at home. So that And I believe that mom, they like it because the extra income is staying in the house and what have you and so on. But please go find a different roof to live under. It's the way we used to do it in the olden days, and I'm still recommending that today. It gives you an opportunity to scream at each other to the loudest of your voice when you want to, be it making love or fighting. You know, mother-in-law, no father-in-law is
Right.
around to you. Yes.
I like your concept of maintaining or asserting your independence and not being dependent on the in-laws. Because if you lose your independence, it's lost, it's gone. So live in a one room, and enjoy that one room, and instead of living in a mansion with in-laws where there's constant conflict.
Okay. Dr. Samuel, good evening. Go ahead.
Hi, good evening. I'm enjoying this discussion so much. I'm learning so much in preparation for when that time comes. I'm getting some insight as to how I can deal with those type of situations. So much was said, but I thought of the question you ask, and oftentimes where there's a mother-in-law, father-in-law, or maybe somebody else, a boss, a supervisor, or even a spouse, and sometimes managing our responses is probably the priority rather than try to control their behavior.
Yeah.
And it just could be more or less, if I put energy in what I cannot change, my stress level goes up. But if I focus on what I have the power to change, which is my responses, I reduce my stress and I develop a strategy. How then do I relate to what I cannot control or change? And maybe I get an evangelistic thought about this may be a case where I have to win this person over by first managing my response, as opposed to trying to change or control theirs. And hopefully I will develop that right, because what I cannot change, but I have to relate to, because she's part of my circle, my community. So I cannot get rid of her. So I have to then find, well, how do I relate to her without her having that negative impact on how I decide, live, or move forward. So I think it's more about managing my response than trying to control her behavior. I think that might be better. And then thinking about winning this person over, because oftentimes, even though, especially as a God-fearing wife, like you were described, we have to approach some situation as this is a soul to be won. This is someone that I need to win over in some capacity. Maybe they're saved but not fully converted, and I may have to win them to a place of where they can now be converted into what's the right idea. So I'm not just winning people on the outside, I have to also win people on the inside.
Wow. Wow. It has been a fantastic hour. It is already 8:34, and I love that, winning people on the inside. So just a thought to everyone here who may or may not have meddling in-laws. Be concerned with your reactions. Seek independent help. Be transformed, not renovated.
Yeah.
Seek your independence and healthy boundaries. And at the end of the day, know that it might be a mission to win another soul for Christ. So thank you so much for the discussions to our panelists, and for those of you who put questions in the mic, in the chats and on YouTube and privately. It has been a great evening dealing with in-laws, fostering an environment where everyone feels valued and respected while creating healthy boundaries so that the new couple can thrive in their marriage. All right, so over to you, Pastor Henry, for the final say and to address everyone on what's to come.
I cannot believe that we have been here for an hour already.
I know.
Oh my gosh, I still have a lot of notes here, Dr. Sutherland. So where do I go? See, For the mother-in-law, gosh. Encourage involvement, involve the in-laws in life events like birthdays, holidays, or even decision making in ways that make them feel included without overstepping their role. In-laws can be the greatest asset in your relationship when you show that you care for your family's emotional well-being. And that is being a part of their joys and sorrows. When you show, as Pastor Samuel said, intent, interest in their spiritual well-being, the values by which they live. And so I would say stop thinking like Kitchener. I don't like a nosy mother-in-law. If you have one, start to think about ways of loving your nosy mother-in-law. All right. She isn't nosy, as I may have said from before. That's how she comes over. But she is a being. She is a human being. And as we were saying before, you know, we read John 3:16 and we say it and we quote it and we don't believe it, right? Because God loves not just those of us who are Christians, not just those of us who have believed in Jesus Christ, but God loves the world. And that includes the nosy father-in-law. God loves them. And we ought to love them just the same. So if you read John 3:16 and you read 1 John 3:16, you will see this is how God showed his love for us. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives, and I would dare say, for our nosy mother-in-laws and father-in-laws. That is how we show love one to another. Thank you for joining us.
Pastor Henry, do you want to speak about next week?
I thought you were coming to Dr. Neff and Pastor Samuel for the closing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Dr. Neff.
I just,
Samuel.
you know, if you have children, at some stage in your life, you may become a mother-in-law or father-in-law. And I would say to you, treat your mother-in-law the way you want to be treated when you become one. And hopefully you can do what Pastor Samuel said. You can win her over by treating her with loving kindness and break the cycle of in-laws being outlaws and meddling and all that stuff. So treat her how you would like to be treated when you become a mother-in-law, so that when you do become a mother-in-law, you do not fall into the pattern of being nosy and meddling and being outlawed from your family.
Our growth is so important. And as we grow, we understand how we okay, I just muted them. And our growth is important. And part of that growth process is we understand whatever I sow, I will eventually reap. And so when I grow in God's love, love is a very powerful thing. And love teaches so much of management of self. Love teaches how to hope, how to believe, how to deal with adversarial things. So if we grow in God's love, that's right there's a recipe. It's just finding out how should we then navigate in that space. So I believe as we grow and we sow the right seeds, we will get to where we need to be. Regardless as a mother-in-law, father-in-law, a child, a boss, a supervisor, we will always have to deal with something adversarial, but our growth in God prepares us for those type of situations.
Thank you. Back to you, Pastor Henry.
Dr. Neff?
Dr. Neff went.
Oh, I'm
Oh, I went, yeah.
So, Pastor Samuel, next Thursday, let me ask you to just share with the folk about your convention
Yes.
that is coming up.
Yes, so Thursday coming the 31st of October to the 3rd of November, we'll be having our annual conference. And the theme this year is transformation, like Pastor Henry just said, transformation, not renovation. And so it will be hosted at Faith Tabernacle, number 7 Newport Street. And we're inviting all of you to come and have an opportunity to be transformed. Our first speaker opening the conference, of course, is your truly, Pastor Anthony Henry. So we know we're in for a great treat, followed by other dynamic speakers, valuable space of worship and transformational experiences. So I want to encourage you to make every effort. We perhaps will make a Zoom available to some people. I'm just saying. So we'll let you know, and we'll send you that invite. And so you can also share in the experience. But I think it's a period, and even for what we're describing here tonight, as we are being transformed, we will learn how to really navigate where we are going forward. And I know this is a space to learn, to grow, be changed, and become agents of change.
Thank you. And Saturday evening, it's the
Yes, yes,
it's
Saturday
the rally, right?
It's a praise break, so the youth take over. It's like a concert type.
Okay,
So yeah,
great. So next Saturday, let me tell you what happened. Next Saturday, I'm in Trinidad. And so it will be almost impossible for me to do Real Talk on Saturday evening. Our youths are likely going to be with Pastor Samuel, and those who are on the program weekly, they're going to be with Pastor Samuel. So I'm going to remind you that the 9th, we will come back on the 9th for the next program, and we look forward to seeing you as we come back together on the 9th for the 9th. That's now the 9th of November. We're going to talk about the role of separated parents in their children's lives. The role of separated parents in their children's lives. So as much as we would like this program to keep all families, once you're married, to stay together, we know that it's not like that. There's some parents there are people who are going to have children and be separated. And how do we talk about that? How do we help individuals in taking care of their children, assisting their children, even though they may be having separate relationships? So we look forward to you joining us. Thank you, Dr. Neff and Dr. Sutherland, Dr. Samuel. Thank you very much for sharing, and all of you who have joined us this evening. Thank you, and look forward to seeing you on the 9th for Real Talk. And as Pastor Samuel said, once he gets that link organized for the conference or the convention, we will try and get it out to you. Lord, those of you who cannot make it to Trinidad, that is, Lord bless you and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Neff, and thank you, Pastor Samuel.
thank you so much. I love it. 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 I miss it. I love it. I miss it. I love it.
Stop this stream.